a very warm welcome to you all. I'm Gara the Mental Traveler, and today I'm going to do my first book review ever of a Star Wars Expanded Universe novel. Actually, I'm going to talk about a trilogy here, so it's more like 3 book reviews smashed into one video. And that book series is the Thrawn Trilogy by American author Timothy Zahn, also known as the Heir to the Empire Trilogy. But before I get into the books, let me just explain quickly what I mean with a Star Wars Expanded Universe, or as other people call it, Legends. In the years after the Return of the Jedi came out, and before the Phantom Menace was released, a lot of people wanted to write about what happened to the characters that we all love after Episode 6, and for years, the storylines that all these authors came up with were considered canon in the Star Wars universe. But once it was decided that The Force Awakens was going to be made into a movie, followed by Episodes 8 and 9, and a lot of spin-offs, Lucasfilm decided that all the books that had been written after The Return of the Jedi would be now considered legends, and the actual canon story is what we saw in The Force Awakens and in the upcoming episodes. So the Thrawn Trilogy isn't anymore considered the official version of what happens to the Skywalkers. But what's so special about the Thrawn Trilogy in the Star Wars Expanded Universe is that after Return of the Jedi, people sort of started losing interest in Star Wars because no more movies were coming out. These books were the first that really brought back popularity to the franchise before the prequels came out. And some of the original characters that Timothy Zahn comes up with in the Thrawn Trilogy would later appear in other novels written by other authors. Those authors would also sort of take the Thrawn Trilogy as canon. Minor spoilers will come up later. The first book in this installment is called Heir to the Empire, and it was published in 1981. It's set 5 years after the events we see in Episode 6, and it shows how the Rebel Alliance, which is now called the New Republic, is trying to solidify its position in the galaxy while fighting the remnants of the Empire. Of course, Luke is still a Jedi, but he's still struggling with discovering what being a Jedi entitles. Han and Leia are married, and she's expecting twins. Meanwhile, all that remains of the Empire is being brought together by this Grand Admiral Thrawn, who is this alien that kind of looks human except that he has blue skin and red eyes, and to my opinion he ends up being a worthy successor of Darth Sidious. I'll give a brief description of what a character says about Thrawn to give you an idea of whether or not he's a formidable enemy to the New Republic. There's nothing one could use against him. He has no patterns, no favorite strategies, and no discernible weaknesses. He studies his enemies and tailors his attacks against psychological blind spots. He doesn't commit his forces, and he's not too proud to back off when it's clear he's losing, which doesn't happen very often. But Thrawn isn't the only villain here. There's also this dark Jedi called Jarrus Sbouth. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Timothy Zahn also introduces other original characters that are very well beloved among the Star Wars Expanded Universe. For example, the smuggler Talon Karrde and his assistant Mara Jade, who has this very mysterious past, and she's a very interesting character who also wants to kill Luke Skywalker desperately, for reasons we later learn. Dark Force Rising came out in 1982. And The Last Command was published in 1983. They pick up almost exactly where the other book ended. And in the end, I enjoyed all 3 books. I couldn't pick a favorite. As a trilogy, they're excellent, and I highly recommend them. I ended up enjoying these books more than I thought that I would, and I think Timothy Zahn does a wonderful job in capturing the Star Wars universe and the voices of the characters that we love from the original movies. I really admire him because he had this really big task ahead of him when he first began writing these books, to create interest once again in Star Wars, and he had to come up with a worthy storyline, one that was believable and would resonate with episodes 4 to 6. He had to capture the voices of Han, Leia, and Luke while creating original characters that would end up being almost or equally loved as the original trio. And now that I've read them, I can understand why they're so popular in the fandom. This post-Return of the Jedi universe really feels believable. Although I did notice that I enjoy the evolution that happens to the original characters the author invented, rather than the ones that Han, Leia, Lando, Luke go through, particularly Talon Karrde and Mara Jade. They both go through these very interesting journeys. At the start of the books, I think that I have them figure it out, only to end up the trilogy, and they've completely surprised me by what they ended up doing, and overall that was a nice surprise. After I finished the Thrawn Trilogy, I went on the internet to learn what happened to Mara Jade and Talon Karrde, because I was so invested in the characters at that point. But as to the other characters that were created by George Lucas, Han, Leia, and Luke, and Lando, I think that Timothy Zahn does capture their voices well. All the things that they say do sort of seem to fit in what the characters in the movies would do and say, but particularly I like the way Timothy Zahn wrote Han Solo. And another thing that I should mention that I think worked out beautifully is the fact that the author doesn't really write storylines with Han, Leia, and Luke together. Instead, he gives each of the main characters his or her own storyline, and that works because we get to see each character doing something important alone. The evolution they go through is more detailed, and I could analyze it better. And another thing that I enjoyed is that we get a lot of backstory and insight into the way the Empire was run. The only thing that I could criticize is that through 3 books, things have been sort of leading to this big climax. But when the climax finally happens, it's all very rushed up and not thoroughly explained. And I thought that was a little bit odd, seeing as everything else was really well explained. I couldn't compare and decide which one I prefer best, the Thrawn Trilogy or The Force Awakens. I think they're both really good stories, and I like to have options. If I didn't end up liking one of them, I still had the other one. And in the end, while I was reading these books, I think that I'm going to consider them canon. The only big differences that I can think of right now is that Leia is suspecting twins rather than just Kylo Ren. So these books really feel like the story that they show can really fit between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. And after the Thrawn Trilogy came out, books were so popular that the author had to come up with a sequel. And so he wrote The Hand of Thrawn, which is this duology composed of Spectre of the Past that came out in 1997 and Vision of the Future, which was published in 1998. I shall do a book review about The Hand of Thrawn as well, so be sure to check that out when I publish it. Anyways, this was my book review for the Thrawn Trilogy. Please let me know what you think about it, if you share my opinions or not, and what you think about the Star Wars Expanded Universe, whether those are better stories than the actual canon that we now see established in episode 7. Also recommend me any Star Wars Expanded Universe novels or legends. I'm particularly those that have to do with the Skywalkers. And as always, in the description box you can find links to the Goodreads pages of the 3 books, Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, and The Last Command. And next week I will also be sharing the link to the video that I'm going to do about the sequel to the Thrawn Trilogy. Thank you very much, and I wish you all a very lovely day.